Welcome to the next instalment of the live series Roundtable events. My name is Jamie Crowley. I work for Amicus Recruitment. So we are a technical specialist within recruitment for Python, Golang and JavaScript across Europe. Now, today we'll have a number of guests and we're going to be discussing one of the hottest topics going around at the moment in the working world, which is remote working, something we've all had to get used to over the last couple of months. So I'm really excited to be joined by 4 engineering leaders within the market. So I'll give everyone a quick introduction and then we can get straight into the conversation. So up first, we've got Dan McNeil. So Dan is the Director of Engineering for ComplyAdvantage, who specialise in building out software to help prevent financial crime. So how are you today, Dan?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, very well. Thank you for joining us. We've also got Altaf Hussain, who is a technical team lead for Yoti, who are a business who specialise in providing online digital ID. How are you, Altaf? You okay?
Oh, yeah, good. Very well, thanks.
Good, good.
Yeah.
We also have McNeil, who is the CTO and co-founder at Toggle. They're a tech startup who are helping using AI and big data to help investors. How are you, Aminak?
Quite well, thank you.
Good, good. And finally, but definitely not least, we have Tahir Khalik, who's the CTO at Trinity London, who are using technology to revolutionise the beauty industry. Tahir, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are we all?
Good, good. Yeah, very well, thank you. Perfect. So I guess we'll just jump straight into things. So obviously everyone's had to get to grips with remote working over the last couple of months, and I think it may have adjusted the way that a couple of people think about remote working in the long term for their businesses. So I just wanted to get opinions of people really. So I guess the first thing I wanted to sort of start with is obviously going back to March when everyone found out that they had to work from home. I think a couple of companies were set up for it, others weren't. But how did you guys sort of handle the transition of getting an on-site team to go remote? I guess, Dan, we can start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I think we already had a culture where people would work remotely 1 day a week or whatever, or as their lives demanded. We didn't have any full-time remote workers.
Okay.
So people were already, people had laptops, people knew what tools to use to speak to the team. So it was quite short notice for us. Our other offices around the world in New York and Singapore had actually closed earlier than London because of the local restrictions or whatever. But so I think people in London knew what was coming. But I think to me, the biggest adjustment people had to make wasn't so much, oh, I need a laptop, oh, I need VPN access or whatever. It was, I don't have a decent working environment at home, because there's a big difference between sitting at your kitchen table working on a laptop for 1 day and suddenly this is your life.
Yeah.
And that was, as a business, we were very keen to look after that side of things and just say to people, look, if you need a new chair, if you need a laptop stand, if you need a screen, tell us and we'll sort one out. So that was kind of the priority in the first week, rather than making sure people were online and making sure people had laptops. Fair
enough. Yeah, it was a little bit of a strange one, wasn't it? I think, yeah, people had to get used to asking for things like that. It's not something they'd have to even consider before. I know that you guys have a lot of remote workers anyway, so how did your transition differ to other people's? Oh, you're still muted there.
Sorry. From transition perspective, I think I joined Dan with the fact that, well, maybe prior to that, we have a hybrid system where we do have offices in London and New York. Actually, we closed the London office much earlier than anyone else because I was actually in touch with a network of other professionals in Paris, and it hit Paris much earlier. And therefore, we knew the trend was going to come. So I think it was 3 or 4 weeks before actual lockdown in London, we sent everyone home. And because we're already a hybrid team and we do have some people working fully remotely, it wasn't a big change on the communication side. As Dan said, we do have also we had the option of some people working from home 1 or 2 days a week. However, we did follow the same principle of make sure you have a proper setup. So chair, webcam, screen, all that. However, later down the line, and this was, I think, a couple of months in, towards May, something like that. Back issues started popping out with everyone. So so we kind of like, okay, go see a chiropractor, expense it and everything. And I think it was a good decision, because even if you have the proper setup at home, working hours tend to be much longer just because you no longer have this disconnect. So all the on-site employees no longer had this disconnect between, okay, I'm going home now, or I have gone into the office, where the start and end of a shift, if I can say, was no longer clear. And we were all naturally working much longer hours. First, because we had nothing else to do, and second, we were already sitting there. So why not? We had to kind of limit it. Another issue was human contact. So a lot of our employees just live alone. So we did kind of do, not necessarily, I wouldn't call them virtual happy hours. It was just time for everyone to meet and discuss things that are not work related, kind of like to get back the human contact, which for us was really important. But yeah, I mean, we adapted, and we were fortunate that almost everyone in the team had a successful transition.
Yeah, that's good to hear. No, I think the human contact thing is a really good point. I'm not too sure whether other people bring it up, but I live on my own, which is something I struggled with. Just not having like a lunch hour to go, have a drink with your colleagues and things like that. It was a little bit odd. So that was definitely something I struggled to get to grips with. Tahir, what about you? How did you guys at Trinity handle it?
So we were quite interesting. We're quite an international company. So we have, we're not massive. So probably about 50, 60 people on site, probably from about 20, 30 different countries. So actually when it all hit, depending on where people's families were, we had a lot of people who weren't just concerned about, their health or UK, but actually a lot of people from Italy, a lot of people from Asia and things like that. So a lot of people actually was about, well, I want to go back to, be with my parents before it's locked down, or I want to go back to, where family is in case they need help or they're remote. So there was a lot of that. I think tech, we're quite well set up. We, although it was all office based, we had, you could pay people work from home a day or two a week. Everything's in the cloud. Everything was kind of, SaaS applications, or, pretty much you're able to work remotely, even develop offline, all that kind of stuff. But we have editorial, we have video studios, photo shoots. We have a lot of people who do a lot of physical products, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. And actually our product, some of our supply chain was based in India in China and in Italy. Right. So actually, interestingly, the first couple of weeks were hard, but everyone really got into the swing of things. And it was all about how do you balance, the social aspect, everything where everyone's mentioned, the tech, it's not just the chair, it's a space. This thing about disconnect, if you're going to work in your bedroom or your lounge, that's also where you relax and you switch off. And it's psychologically, it's not good to have your safe space, your space where you deal with stress and everything like that. So just getting people to work in a different room. If you chill in your lounge, if you go in your kitchen or try to avoid the bedroom. Bedroom's one of the worst places to work from. Just making that environment. I have kids. A lot of we have quite a wide range. We have a lot of young people who, live on their own and kind of quite difficult not having the human contact, but also a lot of people who have family. And how do you balance that? First 3 months, having school shut, nursery shut, you need kind of, so that this idea of a fixed working day was kind of thrown out the window. Really, it's about delivery. It's about actually, and the interesting thing is we've become more efficient. We had real issues with video editors trying to do, gigabytes worth of transition of editorial, of media, of this, that, shared servers, even if you have Adobe in the cloud, actually it's about your line to the exchange. And, if you're in central London, sometimes you're lucky if you get above 10 megabits. Yeah. So it's finding novel ways of how you can help people increase bandwidth, or even find isolated shared spaces to work. And actually trying to see how you can have that human touch. So we had stuff like, yeah, so good thing is tech, you have your stand-ups, you have your retros. A lot of the other business units don't have that, but they started having stand-ups, started having retros, things like that. And then we started introducing, you know, every 2 weeks we have an exercise session with an online trainer if people want to come in. We have some yoga sessions. We have little things to keep people moving and you know, kind of the stretches and all that. So I think it's a mix. We found it's the other way. We started having meetings to death.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like, because people try to overcompensate sometimes for that. So I don't know what's happening. I need a project update. Let's get everyone in a room every like 5 hours or whatever. And then actually creating a cadence of when not to, you know, have a meeting using Slack, other tools, things like that. Like, so I think actually you want to be careful you don't go the other way and you overcompensate for the lack of face-to-face.
Yeah, it's a good point actually, because I imagine people, like you say, if people live on their own and things like that, they can probably get quite lonely, and even a meeting that might have normally seemed quite sort of boring and, you know, I'll go to it if I have to, it might actually seem quite appealing to people. So yeah, I can see that definitely. And Altaf, I know you've got your own team of developers. How did you guys handle it at Yoti?
So Yoti historically has never been an organization that has embraced the work remotely culture. Like, we from the beginning have always been in the office, and the CEO always preferred everyone, including tech, to be in the office. Sometimes, I mean, you know, people work from home when they needed to, but there was a request system. So we were caught quite off guard, and everything that everyone has mentioned previously, I mean, it applied to us too. Like, you know, the setting up the work from home environment, the chairs. Although, you know, we had laptop stands and stuff already, we just took them from the office more than us being supplied directly. So some people went in. I didn't. I had a setup at home because I have small children. But one of the key things I wanted to touch on was outside of you know, the COVID situation and how people handled it. It's more to do with the way of working. So being in the office, you have a whiteboard. You know, you discuss ideas. You can conversate with developers, and the developers in my team had grown accustomed to that fact. So it was a matter of how do we get people communicating effectively in this new type of working. So I remember reading the GitLab remote working manifesto and reading a lot around asynchronous working. So not having this one-to-one connection, not feeling like you have to be on chat 24 hours a day, trying to break away from that, because, you know, people move from talking directly to being on chat and waiting and sitting there waiting to be like heard and spoken to. And I felt that created a lot of unnecessary anxiety in the team. So I ran some sessions on sort of asynchronous working, meaning that you make a request to do some work, maybe a pull request, and then you can get on with something else. You don't have to sit there waiting for comments and discuss the pull request as it was, and communicating on tickets rather than, you know, on chat. So, you know, if there was a piece of work you wanted to review, you start talking about, you made comments on the pull request, made comments on the tickets, and then if you needed to, you created a meeting at a convenient time. And that was so important. We had to really adjust really quickly to that, because a lot of people were lost, and I had to kind of take lead and drive that. So now we're in a really good position. We had a retro today actually, and everyone was saying how well things are going, and the meetings, when we do have them, they're jovial. They're not like, you know, a lot of the pre-work has been done, if you like, in pull requests, on tickets. The communication is there. Most of the time when we're meeting, it's about a decision or, you know, discussion. So it's a lot more focused, and we've adapted in that way. So asynchronous working, the idea of not being one-to-one tied, like a remote connection, whereas like instead of doing that, sending a request out and getting on something else and waiting for the request to come back. You have to manage your time a little bit differently, and you know, context switching is also quite, you know, you have to manage that. But I feel like this is a really good positive thing to come out of this whole lockdown situation.
Yeah.
I have a question with regards to that. Sorry, Jamie.
No, go for it.
Because I've been with organizations that don't do remote at all, and they're like, no, I want everyone in and stuff like that. Usually the underlying is a lack of trust with the team because, oh, if I don't see him working, he's probably not working. So has that changed? Do you think that people are more empowered now that you've entrusted them? Don't worry, we don't need to meet every few minutes, or we don't need to see each other. I trust you to deliver that. Do you think that has changed? Has it empowered, or has it had some counter effect? I don't know.
I feel like the initial not working from home came from the CEO himself. He was, he started very small and spread out. And I think from where he came from, he was like worked in an online gambling sort of system, a company before, and they never did that. And it kind of echoes back of when the new CEO joined Yahoo, and she sort of completely stopped working from home because she talked about these water cooler moments and creating that sort of vibe inside the office. It wasn't a lack of trust, I wouldn't call it that. It was more from that perspective. But then, I mean, I specifically remember a few months in catching up with the CEO, Robin Toombs, and he said, I've completely changed. I've done a U-turn. The way that we're working now is I can tell that people can do their work offline, and we're doing well. And we actually, our business kind of improved in lockdown as compared to before it. So to answer your question, it was a very much a U-turn in the culture, and I suppose it needed this type of scenario to show that this is how modern work takes place. It's like it was forced on them, and we kind of adapted and showed that what other people are doing is actually okay and it's good. So that, I hope that answers what you're asking. I'm good.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's a little bit of sort of scared of the unknown with people. If they haven't done it before, they don't really want to sort of change it if things are already working well. But I guess this has given us all the opportunity to see how it works without necessarily having the choice. But something you said in your first point, Altaf, is something I wanted to follow up on about communicating between the team. I think Tahir mentioned it on it as well. In terms of tools, now I know obviously Zoom is a great example of it. What other sort of tools have you guys found useful to help sort of communications going between your team? Dan, I guess we can come back to you to start on this one.
Yeah, to be honest, we haven't really used anything unusual. I think for us, the processes and the culture change has been more important than the tools. We already had a lot of those tools anyway, because we do have offices around the world. So we were already used to video conferences. We were already used to collaborating on documents via Google Docs or whatever. I would say the one problem we've not cracked is whiteboarding. So there's various solutions that claim to do it, but I've not seen anybody in the team yet find anything which is as good as two people at a whiteboard with pens.
Yeah, sometimes the old-fashioned way is the best.
That we haven't really found. And actually, now that we are, slightly later in the lockdown process, and our office is now actually open again on a voluntary basis for people who want to go in or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the reasons people are going in is if two people want to sit in a room and one of them comments while the other draws on the whiteboard. That's been the biggest draw of people to go back into the office, actually.
Right. Okay. Fine. That's quite interesting. Yeah, I suppose it's, you get it, don't you, where sometimes, tech's brilliant and we've all seen the benefits that it can have, but sometimes you just can't beat the old sort of fashioned, the whiteboard and a marker pen. What about you, Tahir? Have you sort of used anything different, or has it all been sort of Zoom and Slack or something like that for you guys?
I agree. Process is actually more important than tooling. I think people always jump at tooling to try to solve a problem rather than realizing what they actually, how they want to do things. But again, it's tools that there's nothing new. I mean, whiteboarding has been difficult, and screen sharing is so forth. But again, I actually think there's really low tech solutions you can use. Like if you are screen sharing and the web and it's good enough. And these days, if you have a touchscreen with a pen, you know, anything as simple as even like drawing programs or Adobe. I use stuff like Real-Time Board or even Scrambler for really quick post-its and teamwork. And I think there's a lot of tools that do very similar things, and it's actually just, it's having a cadence. So for example, if I use Miro, it's powerful, it's great, you can draw on it. Like, you know, there's even like, if you guys haven't tried it, you get a few free boards if you want to try it out. It's quite cool. But again, when you have four, you can have multiple collaborations. You can have everyone logged in, you have to have an account, and then everyone can draw or do stuff at the same time. But you would never actually get that on a whiteboard, right? You never have four people putting their hands in trying to, but when you suddenly put a tool online that's a post-it note or whatever, you get people all trying to do the same thing at the same time, taking the same space, right? Because you don't have that physical obstruction.
Yeah.
So actually, you can't apply a physical construct to a digital construct, really, because behaviors change whether people realize it or not. So then you have to create rules. So for example, you know, you have a chair. So one person types and tries to annotate, and you forget about spelling, you forget about all of that, but while everyone else talks. Or everyone has a corner and they do a brain dump and then someone puts it together. But you need to have more effort. The thing about doing something virtually is you have to create more control rather than less. So you have to have more precise roles for individuals so that everyone knows who's kind of doing what. So I don't have to do this, or this person's going to put it together. And then you create a journey or a view or a roadmap or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about that chair or that role of someone who's less of a participant, but more of a chair, you know.
Okay. Fine. And yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I mean, I guess, have you got anything to add to that in terms of tools that you've come to use? Or?
Well, not with regards to the tools themselves. I mean, we tried a few things, but I think what we did try, and this is for whiteboarding, it's not a tool. The tool was actually pen and paper, but the way we did whiteboard, that was completely in a disconnected manner, in a way that if I'm whiteboarding with you, Jamie, you tell me, hey, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, okay, I understand the gist of what you're saying. Let me go to my pen and paper, take a picture, send it on Slack, and then you just annotate on top of that and send it back to me. And I think that created a much better effect than any shared board, as Tahir was saying. Okay. So I think it worked for us. I mean, I don't know, we haven't done too much whiteboarding. I mean, I think during all of lockdown, we did 3 or 4 times. So it's not battle tested, but for now, it's something that is working for us. Because again, once everyone is drawing, it's not gonna be very productive.
Too many cooks spoil the broth. Yeah, fair enough. Is that something you found as well, Saf? I know you've mentioned it briefly before.
Yeah. Sorry, I just checking that I'm not on mute.
Don't worry.
Sorry about the hairy fingers going to the screen. I had a bit of an issue with my laptop and Zoom. Didn't agree with each other. We used actually one of our product designers. They came up with a nice way to kind of whiteboard. They've got like this tool that we could all sort of use together. As I think Tahir mentioned, it just like everyone piling in, and we got a lot of poo emojis and kind of like people drawing little cartoons. So it has its pros and cons. There is definitely nothing beats a whiteboard session in a room. You can bounce ideas, and it's a bit of a, I mean, there's a social aspect to it because you can read other people's reactions to what you're saying and doing on the board, and it's having face-to-face conversations as well as writing on a board. It's very difficult to substitute that. So that's something that we found. We use that tool, but it's not as good. So it's like the next best thing, I suppose.
Yeah, so you have to sort of adapt, I guess, and just sort of take what you could at the time. Yeah, I think a lot of people would have been in the same boat, to be honest. A lot of the clients I've spoken to have said similar things. Another thing I wanted to touch on, something we've not really covered so far, is I guess, I mean, like you might have points on this again with having a lot of management over remote teams, but how have you sort of kept your teams motivated? Now, I assume obviously you've all got senior developers and lead developers within your teams that are all sort of really used to it, but if you've had sort of more junior people or even people at mid-level who haven't been used to remote working, how have you kept them motivated and sort of working throughout the lockdown period?
I think doesn't really make a difference whether they're remote or not. It's just that we kind of stick to the process we have, and for the tech side, we try to pace the teams, whether senior, junior, or mid-levels, in the sense where don't take boring tasks one after the other, and don't take only interesting tasks one after the other. So pacing that is very important from a motivation perspective, because then they don't feel the boring task kind of being overwhelming. But with regards to lockdown itself, I don't know. We didn't feel much of a difference that we needed to do something more than that to motivate the team. I mean, we have our weekly sessions where we update everyone on how the business is doing. We have a weekly session on product roadmap and things like that. So we kept those. Only difference is that now everyone's remote. Previously, it was partly remote, people joining in. And I think seeing the pace and how everything is going and keeping the same kind of habits in terms of what we were doing, but adapting them to remote, kind of like kept all the team on going with the same motivation. So we did have one incident where the person could not handle it anymore, and we decided it's a mutual agreement that person leaves the company. But I think it was clear that it wasn't for everyone. So that's why post lockdown we still are gonna maintain the hybrid situation, and we have taken that decision. So it's good, it works. Everyone remotely, we are producing things, we are selling, we have subscriptions and everything. But however, because it's not meant for everyone and people really need this complete disconnect that I have left the office or I have arrived to the office, we will maintain offices post lockdown.
Yeah, I think it's probably best to give people the option, or at least the best of both worlds, if it's something they want to do. Dan, I guess have you had any issues in motivating the team, or has it all been quite a smooth transition?
I mean, I think the one thing I want to pick on and agree on is that this isn't for everyone. You know, I think the thing we have to remember with the remote teams now is that people didn't sign up to be remote. You know, I know people that work in entirely remote teams, and that's fine, but that's kind of what they signed up for. Yeah. Whereas the people in my team, well, they all signed up to spend most of the time in the office. So actually, some of them did find it quite difficult. And I did actually have people, when the email went out to say, look, we're all going to be working from home from next week, there were a sizable number of people who said, I don't want to, can I still come into the office? You know, there's only going to be 5 of us in the office, so we can still socially distance. And actually some people were really resistant to the idea. So I think for me, it was about treating everybody differently, you know, understanding what everybody's individual feelings were towards this and working with that, because some people absolutely love it. Some people, this is always what I've wanted to do. I'm going to go back home to Portugal or Italy or whatever, and I'm going to sit in the sunshine and I'm going to work on the beach every day and I'm going to be productive and I'm loving it. Whereas some people were almost begging to come back into the office. I think for me, the lockdown went in phases, and this is true in personal life, in work life. When it first happened, there was a bit of kind of we're all in this together spirit. So people were having virtual coffee breaks. There were lots more social Zoom calls and that kind of thing. That has kind of tailed off. But I think that's okay, because I think people needed that in the beginning to kind of find their way in this new world. Whereas now, I think people are getting that interaction as much as they need it, because they've kind of found their place in this new world, as it were. So we did it by just encouraging that kind of stuff in the beginning. You know, we did things such as we asked people to send in pictures of their working from home desks, and then had guessing competitions to guess whose desk it was. We had people sending in pictures of themselves sitting at home, and put together a virtual team photo, which we sent around the company to say hello from this team. You know, that kind of stuff, just basically holiday camp stuff, but just to give people this feeling of, look, we're all in this together, and if you're not enjoying this, that's fine, because the rest of us will support you through this difficult first period.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And like you said about sort of treating everyone differently, I think that's a really key point, because like you say, not everyone sort of signed up to it, and not, you know, nobody had a choice in the matter. It's interesting because at Amicus, we've never had like a remote working policy. We've, you know, you can do it every now and again if needs be. But I was quite keen to try it out, and I must admit it's not for me personally, and I can totally see the appeal of it. I think it's more to do with the business that we're in. So I'm used to being in an office with 10 other people who are on the phone, recording videos, making calls, and it's quite loud and quite vibrant. Going from that to working at home in my own apartment and not having anyone around me, it was quite difficult to adapt to that. I think that's, like you said, you know, I think going back, I would have been quite resistant if I'd have known what it'd been like. But yeah, I guess everyone's got their own sort of views on who it works for.
Very quickly say, I've been remote 1 day a week, every Friday for years.
Yeah.
And even though I've been doing that, I struggled with being completely remote.
Yeah.
And even my other half is remote full time and has been for years, and still says this feels different.
Yeah, I suppose it is strange, isn't it? Because I suppose a lot of the time, if you are working remotely before this, then you were one of maybe a few or one of a couple that was doing that. But now everyone's doing it. It must be quite difficult for the people that are used to it as well, adapting back to everyone doing it. So yeah, all a bit strange. Altaf, what about you? Have you found any sort of motivation problems in the team, and if so, how have you handled them?
Yeah, we had a few mental health issues where developers sort of, you know, especially people living on their own, felt a bit sort of overwhelmed by the situation. And I suppose what we encouraged at that time was just take some time off. As I think it was Dan or I can't, someone mentioned earlier, just, you know, you're at your desk 12, like, you know, longer than usual, you know, because there's nothing else to do, you're bored. I think it's our man that mentioned it. You're just stuck there, and you know, if you're living alone, you probably end up working way longer than you should. We suffered some burnout, and that manifested with bugs in production, you know, serious bugs in production that were missed, and you know, things that wouldn't normally happen. So you know, it's what we encouraged then was just for people to take some time off. We went, you know, some people went 4 or 5 months without taking a day off, and that was something that we wouldn't normally have. You know, people didn't want to use their holiday because they thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm locked down. Why am I going to take any time off? I might as well just work through it. But that turned out to be quite detrimental, and myself as well. I took some time off, even if it was just a few days in the week or a week off here and there. And you know, I didn't want to lose my holiday quota because you know, it doesn't roll over to next year.
Nope.
So I just started taking days off to try and you know, space things out. I've still got quite a few to take. So yeah, I'll be taking those.
No, I was saving a few as well, hoping to go away at the end of the year, but somehow I don't think that'll be happening. So yeah, I've got some more to use. Tahir, finally to you. Again, did you have any motivation problems, and again, how did you overcome those?
I mean, I think we're lucky in the sense that we didn't have anyone who really broke down, but it was difficult, especially for people who are either kind of on their own or very thrived off others, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And really, some of it is about being self-aware. So, I mean, you know, as a business and in this situation, you're kind of limited to what you can do. And you can't advise anyone to take or not take whatever risks. And actually, you can't control what they do. So you don't want to say, well, let's just meet up or let's organize a team meeting or do that kind of stuff. And have people on the other side feel like they're not comfortable coming in. So really, it is about that facilitation of like, it was things like we did open the offices, but it's you kind of register to come in so we can safely kind of maintain how many people in the office, but then you have the option. It's and actually, I think some of it is about, like, I think holidays is really important. People forget that it's switching off is the thing, giving yourself time for yourself. And it's not about, like, it is harder when you're at home and you can't disassociate your work environment to your personal environment. But even if you do like a local like a hotel or this, that, or even just stay at home, but don't open up your laptop. So like getting people to actually take holiday, because what you found was people just didn't take it, and it builds up and they never switch off. And so just actually trying to make sure people take time to, even if it's do stuff around your house, you know, family, this, that, the other. And I think that made a lot of difference. And I think actually the key, I mean, people want guidance, but it's that differentiation between helping individuals through maybe individual problems versus dictating this is how it has to be, right? So it's actually everyone trying to find what is their happy new normal for this period.
Exactly. Yeah, it links back to what Dan said, I guess, about treating everyone differently and realizing that everyone's got different needs. And like, say, people living at home will have different issues to people that are living at home with, you know, 3 kids that aren't in school. And again, yeah, it's been different for everyone else. And I think, like Altaf mentioned in the first place, getting people to take holidays when they can't actually do anything, I imagine was quite difficult because people probably didn't want to waste them. But now it's come to this point, we realise we're probably, you know, not going to have much choice anyway. So another thing I wanted to sort of touch on was, obviously with me being the host, recruitment. How have you guys sort of found that this has affected your plans in terms of not necessarily just growth, but also in terms of when you have been interviewing people, have you found it better? Have you found it worse in terms of being able to get to know a person and really find out if someone's right for your team? Has it had much of an impact? I guess, I mean, that could come to you on that one.
For us, it was a matter of reorganizing the processes around recruitment, because we were doing some Zoom or Hangout meetings prior to that, because we were recruiting people offsite.
Yeah.
However, what we realized is that we didn't have a unique process, that each person was kind of like winging the first interview and the second one and then the third one. So we gathered around and then we scripted everything. So now everyone can do the same thing, even on a one-to-one basis. So because usually we sometimes did two-on-one interviews or one after the other, where we kind of like covered different areas. But now that it's scripted, I feel like it's something anyone can take and have the same outcome and same process. And I think that was the biggest change for us.
Okay. And do you feel like when you have been making hires, have you found it more difficult to get an idea of someone's personality and things like that to sort of, you know, just to fit in with the team, or has it been the same, would you say?
No, not really difficult. As I said, we were hiring remote positions prior to this, so we were assessing things. It was just really a matter of organizing ourselves and scripting everything.
Fair enough. And to her, I know, what have your sort of adaptations been, you know, with interviewing people and things like that? Have you found it more difficult, or is it, would you say, being a benefit?
We've actually hired like 15 people. 16 people in the last 3 months. In a way, it was interesting where there was a lot of applicants in the market. So I don't know, like obviously with furlough, with businesses and everything, if you were in a position, so we're lucky where being in e-commerce and being quite, like, we don't have much of a physical presence, so we're not in retail and things like that. So actually our business has been doing better than we expected in this kind of time. So we've kind of been able to push ahead with the hiring. And so there's actually a good candidate pool. I think it's picking up a bit now again. in terms of demand. But actually, I mean, a lot of our like a 2-stage, 3-stage interview process, the start is always on a phone call or something online anyway. So it's really the face-to-face, and I like exercises. So I don't like an interview just to be questions and answers. So, you know, whether you do role play, whether you set a tech task, whether you're pair programming or something like that. And actually, especially in tech, you were able to do that quite successfully online, especially pairing up. So, and actually, like, we've hired product owners, UX, Scrum Master. So like kind of, should I say, the less hands-on engineering side. And even then you can find exercises and scenarios you play out. I think the key thing is to make sure that they have good internet, that videos are on, you kind of agree a cadence at the start of the interview. And you just got to be comfortable with not having that initial human feel. Because actually a lot of our subconscious decisions are made by more than just vocal or just the face, right? It's made by mannerisms, dress, walking, sitting, all that kind of stuff. So you almost have to be comfortable that a lot of the subconscious senses or whatever you would use, you can't. So you almost take a bigger risk in that sense. But then it's more about how structured your interview process is. How can you compare? What kind of questions do you ask? How do you segment it? Like, grading isn't the right word, but how do you validate one candidate against the other? That kind of stuff. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's, again, a lot of clients have said pretty much exactly what you just said, in terms of it's more just about adjusting the way that you do things. And I think, Altaf, I know you guys obviously didn't have any really, remote options before this. How has it impacted your interview processes and your recruitment overall?
Our recruitment froze to begin with. We had a recruitment freeze. People got like pay cuts and stuff because it was very uncertain, and we didn't know how we were going to make it through. So it was quite grim times to begin with. So all recruitment was frozen, and we've just recently opened it up. I've been, trying to hire 2 developers over the last month. So we already had like a hacker rank sort of online remote test, which kind of set the screening of developers quite well. And then one thing I'm finding difficult is to gauge how because in an interview, what I like to do is also have some personality, have a prod at their personality, meaning I'll create some conflict, I'll issue some criticism, just to see how the reactions are, because it's one thing being a great engineer, but you also have to work with other people, and you need to that's one of my ways to kind of see if that person will react well to that, and can this person work well in the current team that we have. And that's very difficult to do. I find technical ability I can do. I mean, technical projects, hacker rank tests, an online sort of technical interview with pair programming, and maybe some remote whiteboarding. But the actual culture fit and personality is very hard to gauge. And you do, the micro movements people make, and you can tell sometimes people wince if you say something. So you can't get any of that in a remote interview, or I couldn't anyway. Maybe other people can. I couldn't. So that's been the challenge. So that's been the hardest part of it. And
I guess if you're planning to go back into the office as well, you've got to sort of take things into consideration, like this engineer is going to be working in our team, on site and being sat on a desk with 5 other people. So you want to make sure they're going to be okay with that, as well as just being able to communicate remotely, which is obviously impossible to gauge, like you say. So I guess everything's got a little bit more risk to it at this point, on the sort of personality and the culture fit side with everyone. But it's just one of those things, I think, isn't it? We haven't really got much choice in the matter. And Dan, has anything changed for you guys in terms of processes, or how have you found it?
Process hasn't really changed. We started off, we kind of had a soft slide into remote interviews. So we started off just before we all locked down by offering candidates the remote option, because, you know, there was that period when you weren't actually locked down, but people were a little bit more anxious about using public transport and whatever. So we kind of went into it smoothly. What I found we start the interview process with a phone screen, but of course they're now all done by video. Yeah. So actually we're getting more idea of people at the initial screen than we did previously, because it used to be just phone. And one thing I found is the process is moving a lot more quickly, because frankly, candidates are at home. They find it a lot easier to take an hour to do a video call than they did when they used to have to book a half day from work and travel across London to the interview. So actually, the processes with candidates are rattling on quite considerably more quickly. We do the stuff where we look at whether somebody's going to be, are they going to fit within the team? Are their values the same as ours, and that kind of stuff. We've actually found doing that via video okay. I think the reality of this situation is, no matter how much Christmas is coming up and we want this all to be over by Christmas, it's not going to be. We're going to be at home or largely remote or partially remote for a good long while yet. I will be surprised if companies are 100% back in the office by this time next year, for instance. And in that situation, isn't it quite important that I assess what a candidate's like over video and remotely? Because frankly, they're going to be spending their onboarding and they're working for the company remotely for the foreseeable anyway. So it's quite important to know that somebody can communicate their ideas well and can communicate well remotely, because that's what they're going to be doing. Yeah.
That's a very good point, actually. I didn't necessarily think of it like that. And I guess that actually sort of comes on to the final point I wanted to cover. And I guess then
just one quick comment. Dan spoke about something we had to completely change. So employee onboarding, we've completely revamped now.
Okay.
Prior to this, we had the possibility to say, okay, we just get into the office. If the person is on site, it's fine. Then we just tag along, and then we just take the person through with the onboarding stuff. Whereas now that everyone is remote, we had to actually kind of schedule things. So what does the first hour look like in the day? What does the rest of the day look like? And kind of like pre-plan these things. Because previously it was someone from the office would just look around, okay, who can take care of this with the new hire or things like that. And someone would jump on a call or with the person in the conference room or the meeting room and then just go through it. However, now we need to be much better prepared, if you'd like, and slightly more organized again with the onboarding.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's another good thing to cover, actually, is the onboarding process, because like I say, everything's changed, and people, I think it might have been Dan that mentioned it earlier, people weren't necessarily expecting to come into a remote environment. I know it's a little bit different with yourself, I mean, because like you say, you've got offices across the world, but I think, companies have had to change that quite drastically, and it's been a bit of, like I say, a drastic change because people weren't expecting it, and it's sort of come out of nowhere, so everyone's been in the same boat with it. But yeah, I think what Dan said as well just then is a good point to link into the final thing I wanted to cover, which is how does everyone think this is going to impact? Like like Dan said, it might be another year, it might be another 2 years, nobody really knows. I guess with your own companies and also in the more sort of generic working world, how do you think this is going to impact remote working in the way it's viewed, especially by some of, say, the bigger corporate companies that have typically sort of frowned upon it? How do you think it's going to change? Almina, if you want to start on that, I know it might be a little bit different for yourself because, like I say, you've already got remote teams, but
yeah, but no, I've been discussing a lot with some of the bigger companies we work with, and it really feels like it's complete chaos there. I mean, we work with Microsoft on some things, and literally during lockdown, I had 4 different person contact me for the same thing. It's like, guys, talk to each other. It's like, not possible. So I don't think it will be, let's say, something feasible for all the corporations. At least not in this abrupt way. And I feel like if bigger companies need to transition to not a full remote, but a more remote way, they really need to do that. They need to transition and ease their way in, because this abruptness has created a lot of chaos with them. With regards to us, I said earlier, we're going to stick to a hybrid situation and probably go back into the office by either early December or early January. We're still waiting to see how the second wave, will it happen, will it not happen? So not sure yet. So, but in the meantime, I mean, everyone now is strictly working from home. But for us, we hope that soon enough we can go back to the hybrid situation, because again, it's really not for everyone, and I myself, it's not for me. Although I have a proper setup, the screen, the cam, everything. I really like this disconnect of, okay, I've left the office. I mean, if we need to work late, I will work late, stay late at the office, but when I'm gone, it's gone. But
yeah, you can actually sort of switch off and switch your mind to something else. I imagine it's quite difficult to do from home. Dan, again, what do you think these sort of long-term impacts are going to be, both the ComplyAdvantage and in the working world as well?
I think both will change. I think that the biggest change I've seen is not necessarily in the attitude of Comply, because we were always open to people doing days at home or whatever. It's actually been in the change of some of the individuals. You know, I said earlier that people hadn't signed up for this, but some of the people that initially said, look, I really don't want to do this, I want to stay in the office, are now the people saying to me, could I do this permanently? You know, could I do 3 days a week at home? So I think not only has companies' attitude changed, but the attitude of the people in the teams has changed as well. So I don't think it would be possible for us as a company, or indeed for the world, to go back to saying the expectation is that you are at this place of work 5 days a week. On the flip side, one thing, we've coped very well switching to a remote team, and I wonder whether we've coped very well as a remote team because of the relationships we built up when we weren't a remote team.
Okay.
So I think there are actually some advantages to being in the office together. You know, there's a lot of advantages to being remote, and there's a lot of advantages to being together, and it's a balancing act. And I think we're going to end up in a hybrid situation as a world. As for Comply, we're not going to transition to a remote company. We're going to have office space, and that's going to be where people are. But I suspect we'll be a lot more open to people working from home more. But to be honest, right now, it's a case of making sure that everybody has got the right working environment for them, be that, you know, our offices are open, they're very underutilized. So if there's somebody who doesn't have a good working situation at home, they can come in and work. And I think we'll be in that situation for a while, because, you know, just to talk about something personal, is I was in the office 2 weeks ago for the first time since March, and I found it really, really weird. I didn't find it a relaxing place to be, because you're looking at the one-way system, you're looking at the hand sanitizer, you're thinking, I can't go in the kitchen if there's already somebody in there, and you're thinking, hang on, you're talking to me, are you 2 meters away from me? Do I need to wear a mask or not need to wear a mask? It's just not a relaxing situation for me. And I think that it won't be a relaxing situation for many people until we're back to where we were and we can sit next to each other in meeting rooms without leaving empty chairs. So I think until we get to that point, there is no way we're going to go back to an office-based company.
No. Yeah, it's a good point. There's so many things to take into consideration, especially with like the government coming out with new rules and new sort of conditionings every day. It's so hard to keep up with everything.
The one thing we've said as a company is we are not going to vacillate with the rules. You know, if the government say you can go back to work, we're not going to say, right, everybody back to work, because tomorrow there might be another spike and we all come back again. So we're going to put basically a low pass filter on it. We're going to wait until people can go back to work for a while. It's been demonstrated to work. And then we'll turn into, you know, right, here's now a change in the phase of our working.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Let other people sort of use it as an example to see how it works, and then obviously you've got this sort of market research done already then.
With the people who need to, because we can
Exactly.
work remotely. So if there's limited space on public transport and limited space on whatever, people who need that to get to the office should use that, not people who can comfortably work from home.
No, definitely, I would agree. It's all been a little bit crazy. Altaf, I think you're still with us. Your camera's disappeared, but if you are still with us,
yes.
How do you think everything's going to be impacted, both at Yoti and also, as I said to Dan and Arminak, in the sort of wider working world as well?
I think the world has changed, well, forever, in terms of, the modern working environment. In history, we've had the 1918 Spanish flu. This is going to go down now in our times as a moment in our generation, and we're not going to forget it easily. So I think the world has changed, and in terms of Yoti, we're now fully open to remote workers, like fully remote workers. We're gonna allow that, and I think that's a positive step in our view. And I agree with the hybrid approach that the others have mentioned.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think something that Arminak said originally, and I think Dan touched on that as well, is a lot of the bigger companies that can't necessarily offer it might struggle to hire, because if there's 10 companies that are able to offer remote work, they're a similar business, offering similar salaries and tech stacks and all this. If they can all offer remote working and one of them can't, there's a real good chance they're going to be missing out on some of the best people out there. And I spoke about it on LinkedIn recently. There are some engineers I've spoken to, like Dan said at the start, that really didn't want to work from home and can't wait to get back in the office. But I do feel like that's become the minority of the last couple of months. And a lot of people, now that they've seen how remote working is for them and how productive they can be, they're not sort of rushing to get back into an office. And a company that offers remote working, whether it's a hybrid or fully, is going to be much more appealing to them. So it will be really interesting to see how things develop. And I guess it's just a waiting game now to see what changes. Finally, Taha, what are you sort of thinking in terms of your approach to remote working at Trini? And again, if you've got any opinions on how things will change overall.
I mean, I think fully remote, we're definitely open to. I think for the kind of business we are, might have some limitations. So I think it depends on the availabilities. So ultimately, I think what we'll come to, let's say, even if there's a vaccine tomorrow and everything is kind of like a hybrid model where it's not about saying I'm 2 days a week or I'm 3 days a week or I'm coming in on Mondays or Tuesdays, but more driven by initiative. So, if I was going to do onboarding, that'd be good to do face-to-face. If we were going to do project kickoff or a major deliverable or a workshop or an inception or things like that, it'd be great to at least have that done, like we say, whiteboarding face-to-face. If we're going to have a major showcase or a company event, that's great to do face-to-face. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone always has to come or you can't have remote workers. But I think if you're going to, depending on the nature of the business, on your leadership team, on your senior engineers, on your architects, on things of that nature, if you're going to pair up, if you're going to have, like, all of that works remotely, but you want to have the option of being able to organize something that is either a smaller group of people who live in the North London and easy to meet up or whatever, but you want the option to be able to have something where you have that physical touch point. So although I am for fully remote, and I have people who are, I have someone who's moved into Europe and things like that. It's still that, finger in the air once a month, we can have a meetup and, things like that. So I think I'm still not totally, then I might as well just go for offshore, right? You look at costs and you look at the difference it makes having a PAYE team versus a remote offshore nearshore team kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, for that to have the difference of PAYE or something, or even like long-term contract is you believe in the company, you believe in what you're doing. It's not just the salary. It is the culture, the ecosystem, the work you do, all that kind of stuff. And I think you need to be able to have some level of touch points to do that.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And like you say, having being able to have like a meetup once a month, even if you've got people, for example, working in Europe or across the world, you know, further ashore. One of the other issues, I guess, then would be the sort of travel restrictions and how that'd be doable. But it's going to be interesting. And yeah, I really want to thank everyone as well for all the points you've brought up. It's been really good to get different opinions from people like Altaf who had a company who weren't really invested in remote work and now had a complete change. I mean, I know you guys have pretty much got through it, you know, relatively smoothly due to the remote work that you do already and things like that. So, yeah, thank you everyone very much for taking the time out. I know everyone's very busy, so yeah, it's been really good. Thank you very much.